This video is a review of the rounding rules. You've probably seen them before, but it might have been a really long time. Your math classes let you truncate a lot. They don't emphasize rounding. So this might be the first time you're having to round in a little while. So not only am I going to review the rounding rules that maybe you've seen before, I'm going to introduce you to one that only chemists use. Almost no other branch of science or mathematics use this as the rule, and it's kind of strange. You'll find all these rules and these examples on page 4 of your chemistry measurements packet. At the top of that page, you will see these little information about rounding. Rounding a number is when you take it and you either bump it up or bump it down to make it cleaner. A lot of times when we do calculations, the calculator gives us this long string of numbers. I call that calculator garbage. You didn't put garbage in, so you don't want to take that garbage out. So you would bump it up or bump it down to have fewer digits in it. You can round to any place value that you want. Usually that's going to be dictated by the numbers in the problem, and you'll learn a little bit more about how you could tell that later. And then just finally, that rounding means you're reducing the number of digits in a number while keeping the value similar to what it was. When I'm rounding, I find that I picture this ladder in my head, where X, the underlined last X, is the digit that I'm looking at for rounding, and maybe it's got numbers after it. If those numbers are less than 5, then I just keep it the same. So like if it was a ladder, you would just stay on the ground. You wouldn't change. But if that number that's next to the digit is higher than 5, then I'm going to climb up that ladder and go up to the next level, to the next number. So I'll refer to this graphic a little bit on the next slide. So these rules are also on page 4 in your packet. How to round numbers, you decide which is the last digit that you're going to keep. So a lot of times there will be a lot of digits before and you're going to keep all of those. And then if they say round to this place, you find that place. And then you look at just what's right next door. Don't look any farther than what's right next door to that number. If that next door neighbor is less than 5, so if it's 4, we look at my graphic 3, 2, 1, then we're just going to leave that digit the same. And we call that rounding down because you're sort of going down the ladder to the ground. If that digit that's next door is more than 5, or it is a 5, but there's some more numbers after that, that means you're past this halfway point on the ladder. You just might as well go ahead up to the next level because that's the shorter distance. So you'd go up, you'd bump it up by 1. We call that rounding up. Here's the rule that only chemists use. I call it the funky 5 rule because it's pretty funky and it only applies when it's exactly a 5. I wish that I had put in rare cases because it is very rare that something ends in exactly a 5. But if it does, ends in exactly a 5, you are exactly halfway on this ladder. You're not closer to rounding up or to rounding down. So how do you decide? I think in the past, you've always rounded up, but chemists, I guess, have this worldly view of things that we don't want to always round up. We're artificially inflating our numbers if we consistently round up if it's exactly a 5. So the way we've come up with to sort of even out the universe is to sometimes round up and sometimes we round down. And the way we can pick that is we're going to look at the digit we're keeping, and we want to keep an even number. This won't make sense until you see some examples. So here's some examples. If we had the number 65, and I failed to put in your packet that if we were rounding 65 to the tens place, well, that's exactly a 5 after the 6. So we can't decide, do we keep it 60, do we go down 60, or do we go up the ladder to 70? Well, we didn't want to keep an even number. 6 is an even number, so we would keep it 60. But if we had 55 and we're exactly halfway, if we rounded down, we would keep a 5, and that's an odd number. So instead, we would round up and we would keep a 6 there. So let's try a couple more practice. If you had 1.5 and we were going to round that to the ones place, to a whole number. Well, if you rounded down, you'd go to 1, which is odd. If you rounded up, you'd go to 2, which is even. So we would round up to 2. If we had 2.5, then if we rounded down, we would go down to 2. If we rounded up, we'd go up to 3. So we would go to 2. So here's some examples also in your packet. If we had 74, and we're going to go to the tens place. Well, the tens place has a 7 in it. The next door neighbor is a 4. So we're going to go down the ladder and we're going to keep it a 70. If you had 86 and we're going to the tens place, the next door neighbor, tens place has an 8, the next digit is a 6, which is 5 or more. So we're going to round up or increase the 8 by 1 to make it 9. So this one would become 90, and it gets rounded up. So this is the one that made me decide we needed to go over this. On your skills check, there was a question about Aisha and her GPA. She needed it to be a 4.1 and higher, and she has a 4.09 or 49873. So clearly the universities were rounding in this case to the 10th place. So we would look at the 10th place and only at the next door neighbor. That next door neighbor is a 4. And so that means she's going to have to round down to 4.0. As much as she would like to round 2 times and round this and then round this, that's not the way rounding works. You only look at the next door neighbor to the place that you're rounding.